Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Hotel Tonight. If you are like me and you are not so great at planning ahead, you got to try Hotel Tonight. Hotel Tonight is an app that helps you find amazing hotel deals at the last minute, up to 7 days in advance. It's perfect for a spontaneous getaway or indulging in a little staycation. All it takes is 10 seconds, just 3 taps and a swipe. What are you waiting for? Get in on these killer last minute deals and download the Hotel Tonight app now.
I need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, he just got back from the Washington Monument. It's Andy Greenwald!
In my defense, today was going to be all positive.
Yeah.
Right? We saw a movie.
Yeah.
Another movie. We saw Spider-Man. Spider-Man is a delight.
We'll get to Spider-Man.
I am back in the happy vibes. We're sitting here. We're going to talk about stuff. I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I was going to say something to our boss, Bill Simmons, about how much I enjoyed his John McEnroe podcast, but he wanted none of it.
Nah, I don't want that.
He's here.
Bill's here in the studio because Bill saw Baby Driver.
Yeah, I'm always 8 days late
And
now
nobody
with
puts
everything.
Bill in a corner, and Andy put Bill in a corner.
I didn't know. I wasn't aware. I'd fallen behind on my media. I wasn't aware that every 18 months, Andy just enrages
So
me.
did Micah
what was the
narc
last-
Andy out? Is that what happened?
Yeah.
Micah narked you out.
Micah's
by the way.
upset. Micah's the most upset.
Micah gave me a very friendly retweet last night, though, so I feel like we're on good.
That was
we're
probably to
back on
make up
good.
for
Don't
the
buy
fact
it.
that he
No.
jumped
Don't
you
buy it. He's
into
bad.
a Bill Simmons Twitter thread.
He did do that.
And you probably got hit by like a million Shams memes, and then also just a lot of Boston hate.
People are very tender in their baby drives. People do not like a disagreeing opinion about this. Wait, what was the last time I enraged you? 18 months ago. Wait, what was 18 months ago? 18 months
that
ago
True
was
Detective season
the
2?
beginning of
No, because
2015.
I was kind of partly
2016.
on Andy's side. I don't know. There was something else. Once
Beginning of
every 18 months.
2016. Something.
You like shows that I
That you
feel
don't
like
like.
they're just too precious.
Yeah,
But let's talk about.
Like both of you like the Nick, and that made me mad.
You didn't like the Nick?
No,
I thought you'd like that.
I don't like anything set before like 1950.
Game of Thrones alone was a big.
Game of Thrones
leap for
has
you.
no year. It's set in the middle of we don't know what year it is.
But it's not contemporary.
You were just telling me at lunch you were like very excited because you've gotten Fast, you got John Wick 2, and you got Baby Driver. It's like a good summer for you.
It's a nice run of iconic rewatchable action movies. I will watch. I think Baby Driver. I will say I thought it was one car chase short.
Yeah.
Thought they could have squeezed one more in. I thought the first 7 minutes was
Yeah.
just incredible.
Were
I
you a
was
John
so
Spencer
locked
Blues
in.
Explosion fan?
No, not really.
Okay.
I liked it when the one red car went in between the other red cars. I'm not Mr. Hatred on this.
No, I know. It's one of those movies that you could go either way, and I'm sure the internet, the backlash already started.
Oh, yeah.
No, but let me tell you, the front lash is strong and
the
abiding.
front lash is good too.
People, tell us where you stand on this. Here was what I got in trouble for, I think. A, not liking the movie. B, I was basically saying I understand that a lot of the feel-good energy surrounding this movie and a lot of the enthusiasm and a lot of the sensitivity comes from the fact that this is an original film. It is not a comic book movie.
Yes.
And it's doing really well.
Yeah.
And it has a good soundtrack, and that's enough. People are like, you can't criticize this beautiful unicorn because it's so rare that we get one.
Well, I
of
don't
these.
agree with that.
I think has a lot to do with.
That's a separate argument.
Yeah, but I think that one is coloring people's defensiveness about it. 'Cause
Yeah.
usually people are like, it's a summer movie, I like it, I don't
The
like it,
inverse
whatever.
of that is what are you judging it as? Like, you know what I mean? Are you trying to say that is this supposed to be an Oscar contender in your mind? Or were you just like.
But my feeling is I just thought it was incredibly empty, and I did not find it entertaining for that reason.
Right.
There were moments when I kept trying to get into it.
Incredibly empty.
I think there are some performances
Do you
in it that are
find-
really strong.
Do you find Point Break incredibly empty?
No, Point Break, movies like Point Break, like just take you. They're purely escapism, which
Yeah.
is a legitimate thing that
I
I'm
think
a fan of.
Andy is an intellectual.
That's
Andy,
enraging people enough.
Andy saw Baby Driver.
Yeah.
He's experiencing it. And he's grading it against this higher level of what he thinks Baby Driver is going to be.
Yeah.
When in fact, it was really just an action movie.
Yeah, that's
that
what
was
we were
kind
saying.
of cool and had weird performances and had evil John Hamm and evil Jamie Foxx.
But there's such a dearth of action movies
Yeah.
like this. Like John Wick is one, the Fast movies and then after that, it's like you either get really hardcore stuff like The Raid,
Right.
or nothing. So you
Yeah.
basically this is it. This is it for action movies, and
It
it
also-
had tonally it had a kind of '90s feel that I think people sort of liked.
That's a good call. A '90s feel.
Yeah, I thought like John Hamm and Jamie Foxx especially felt like villains from a '90s action
because they
movie.
were alive and working in the '90s.
Possibly because they remember the '90s. Yeah,
because they're
I
not
thought
young.
it was a movie that had moments.
Okay.
You know, my theory on moments.
Yeah.
I need to have for a movie I'm going to watch again. it
So
had
what
a
was your
couple
favorite one in
moments.
Baby Driver?
I really liked Ansel Elgort in this.
Wow,
I know.
This is the first
Controversial
time you've
take.
ever enraged me.
I know.
This is
I liked it. I thought it was like it was a quirky, weird, kind of empty role that had to rely on him just being kind of weird and unique. And I thought he was weird and unique, and it kept my attention the whole time. It was like I never went to the bathroom. I was locked in. I was like, "Where's this going?"
Yeah.
And it flew by. When was the last time? These movies are so long now. All of them are 2.5 hours.
I love the length of the movie.
Yeah.
I
was
will
good.
agree with you on that.
It
I just
flew
felt
by.
like
I didn't love the ending, but that's all right.
I just felt like I was locked in a conversation with someone who was telling me about their cool ideas and showing me their cool stuff. And like, when you get to the scene where it's Paul Williams, right, who's doing the cuts of the pig over the guns and grenades.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I was like, come on, like that's the kind of thing that was just sort of.
Did you like the
script showing off?
the
that I
diner
found kind of
scene
exhausting.
where Jamie Foxx explains who the John Hamm character is, and it's basically Don Draper? Where he's like, "You're a Wall Street guy who got into coke."
Yeah, I love that.
Like, and then your life fell off the rails. I was like, this could have been the '90s Mad Men.
Let me throw
I would
this
like
at
the
you.
'90s Mad Men.
I felt like it was like 20% of a parody of a 90s movie, which is one of the reasons I liked it.
Okay.
I think his
I don't
movies
think
have
it took itself completely seriously.
He rides the line between homage and parody, and like Hot Fuzz is like that. To some extent, Shaun of the Dead is like that. It explores some of the conventions of why, like especially in Shaun of the Dead, it's like if we're running from zombies, like why are we running this way? It's like a lot of that stuff of the rules of these genre movies. I thought that this was a pretty very obviously like a love letter to that stuff rather than a parody of it.
Yes,
But-
and maybe it was too enthralled.
And
to
it
that.
rekindled my affection for certain famous celebrities.
I thought you were
Hadn't
gonna say
enjoyed Kevin Spacey in a while.
Wow, Spacey was
Hadn't
really good.
hadn't really. When was the last time he's been in a movie that I wanted to see? Been like 4 or 5 years.
Outbreak?
K-Pax?
You'd have to go like House of Cards, right? But he's that House of Cards character. I don't feel like is Spacey. It's this own weird
Right.
character.
Doc does a pretty
But-
quick 180 in this film.
Yeah.
Doc's breaking dudes' legs and then sacrificing himself for young love.
Yeah.
Doc's
That-
character arc off screen is
That part was a little bit of a stretch.
dramatic.
I love the evil Jamie Foxx. I thought that was the most engaged he's been in
Jamie
a while.
Foxx is having a good time. Jamie
And
Foxx.
I was excited that John Hamm was doing something other than commercials.
I was happy for that too. Also, great haircut for him.
Good haircut.
Strong haircut.
I didn't know about his girlfriend, a little bit of overacted, but in general,
Literally, all she had to do was make out with him, which is a part that many women in my life would happily audition
It's been an
for.
up and down movie year, but and there's been like a couple of like these 3 to 5 week stretches where it just feels like there's no reason to go to the theater. But I think actually coming into August after Atomic Blonde comes,
that'll be our 4th one.
that'll be. I've seen that, and it's pretty
good?
it's pretty entertaining.
Yeah, people are really high on
Yeah,
that.
it's really good. I mean, like the action scenes are like really great. Like the guy who did the first John Wick, and it's got like just these incredible scenes. But McAvoy and Charlize are really, really good in it. And I kind of wonder if we're
I
going to
like
get to
McAvoy.
August and be like, you know what? There's like probably 10 good movies so far this year. Like really, really either very entertaining reasons to go to the theater or like actually legit good movies.
This could be the takeaway from the summer, though. It's not the ones that people were expecting. It's not the sequels, right? It's not the big
it's like the
budget stuff.
random like the Get Outs and Logan, which I think people were excited for but didn't know it was going to
Hey,
be that
let's
good.
just say it. It's been a pretty good movie year so far.
It
I
always
think the
is.
narrative is comic book movies. It's
that's
like
'cause
I've seen like 8 movies I really enjoyed.
But isn't that because the coverage of the movie year to come is just based around the tentpoles that the studios tell you that it's based around? So every movie I've seen this year, all 2.5, maybe 3, I don't remember of them, all of them have had the Gunslinger trailer.
Yeah.
And people have been talking about a Stephen King Gunslinger movie for years. It got a lot of coverage that the cast, McConaughey and then Idris Elba. It doesn't look good, right?
And it's actually, isn't it like a sequel to the actual books or something?
I've never understood what the Dark Tower series is, but people seem to love it.
Okay.
But this doesn't look good. And
Did you
it
ever
feels
have a
like
Stephen
it's being
King
forced
face?
down our throat, whereas this other stuff is more exciting.
Did you ever
I mean, he's shining.
Yeah. But
Come
did you
on.
like the? Did you
I read
the,
all the books. Yeah, the most disappointing book that should have been an awesome movie and wasn't was Christine. The evil car. It was all. It had its
Christine
own
was
corner.
pretty cool though. The movie, the John
Yeah,
Carpenter
have
movie.
you watched it anytime lately?
I have not.
It was miscast. Poor Keith Gordon, who ruined like 4 different movies in the 80s.
He was in Birdie.
He back to school, most miscast.
Oh yeah,
Most
that's right.
miscast.
Yes,
He was
that's
really
right.
bad. Dressed to kill.
This is
He was
Keith Gordon,
always
the
Keith
director
Gordon's always
now.
Yeah,
bad.
Keith Gordon director.
Keith
yeah.
Gordon,
and he was
terrific TV
Keith
director
Gordon,
now.
very good in Legend of Billie Jean.
Who is he in that?
That was the only time he's been
rich
properly
kid that they
cast.
eventually wind up staying at his house, and he's like the filmmaker.
Yeah.
And he's like walking around shooting, and they make her video the Fair is Fair video.
Yeah. I've noticed with some 80s movies that they feel slower and slower every time I watch them now. The
Yeah.
pacing.
Are you talking about Billie Jean or just in general?
Just in general, like that 80 to 86 window
That they're
of
slow now.
classics. Like if you watch 48 Hours now, which is my favorite movie of all
Oh,
time,
there's a lot of
first 20 minutes
Yeah.
is just, it just takes
also,
forever.
a lot of Nick Nolte driving up and down
Right,
hills.
Yeah.
He's like, Danny.
Yeah. Eddie Murphy doesn't show up until like the 23-minute mark.
Those are like that's the arm of the 70s still holding
Yeah.
on to the filmmakers, being
Yeah.
like, no, you're not making popcorn fluff. You're still making art here. And then slowly they pull that yoke off.
Yeah.
I think the funniest thing about cable right now is that everyone who runs a cable network or cable movie network is just like, we're going to run All the President's Men as some sort of feud to the
Commentary.
Trump. It's on all the time. You can't go a day without All the President's Men on in some prime spot on Cinemax, HBO, or Showtime.
Do you ever not watch it?
I always jump in.
It's so entertaining.
Yeah.
I always jump in.
It's never not good.
That does not have a slow minute, that movie. How long is that movie? In my mind, it's like 80 minutes
I think it's
long.
pretty long. Is it 2.5
flies.
hours?
You know, one of the reasons it's so great is it's just you have two giant stars at the peak of their powers.
Yeah.
Peak of their
Both
hair,
like,
too.
They're playing off each other, but there's a little one-upmanship going at the same time, and it's just
There's also
the
like
best use of both of them.
incredible bench. It's because Balsam,
Robards is
Robards,
amazing.
Holbrook.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's like every guy with his feet up on his desk is great in that movie.
Yeah. It's a
Um,
very male movie. Like even though the women in it are all like their assistants or
Yeah, a lot of
if that
secretaries.
part feels super dated.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
other than that, it's
Oh, that's right. Because
35
Catherine
years.
Graham's not in it at all.
No, that's
No.
what this new movie is.
Yeah, the paper.
It's gonna
But I have one more thing
address
on
that.
action movies. I think the car chase and the car race and that stuff, the camera stuff is getting better and better with it. And like that first 8 minutes in Baby Driver, and when he's also using LA, I think I'm always biased against driving chase scenes in LA because
Well, this isn't.
I'm always like,
It's
how did they
Atlanta.
do that? What time of day was it?
They set this in Atlanta.
It's Atlanta.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was LA.
This is a big controversy.
You're
because
not the only person to say that.
Andy
But one
and
of
I
my
were-
problems with it was that it was so not a place. It was just
Yeah.
Atlanta. And it
was it Atlanta in the movie or
Yeah.
was it LA?
Yeah, it's
They sort of
Atlanta in the
half-assed
movie.
make it Atlanta in the movie midway through.
Oh, I missed that part. I must have been getting M&Ms.
So you didn't
I
have to
thought
pee,
it was
but you did
LA.
have to get M&Ms.
I was
yeah.
wondering how they filmed this in LA
Yeah,
because
but-
with all the lanes and stuff.
Here, I'm going to say something. I'm going to end this on a positive note.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something positive about Baby Driver. Edgar Wright really knows how to direct movies. He has a point of view.
Yeah.
So having someone who can do that direct something as specific as car chases makes you realize how bad most car chase movies are because you can't, or action movies, because you can't tell what's going on. If it's just CGI nonsense or it's one of those movies where they hire
Yeah.
someone to basically manage the franchise, it's just blurry nothing. But if you have someone who actually knows how to move the camera,
Yeah, it's just like very
Edgar Wright
straightforward.
or George Miller with Mad Max last year, a movie I saw on a 8-inch screen on a Delta flight, but still
Just as he
appreciated
his
it.
20-year journey to get that to the screen finally ends with you watching it on a Delta flight.
One of the things I've been proud of myself with movies and stuff is trying to avoid reading as much as possible before I see it.
Yeah.
And then doubling back after.
Yeah, it's that's
Because I
actually
really didn't know
fun.
anything about this movie other than our staff was excited about it. That was it. That was all I had. I avoided everything.
People have been accusing me of having too high expectations, but the expectations I had were just because I like Edgar Wright's movies. I
There you go.
thought I believed in him.
Listen, you answered all the questions I had about you when you did your top 25 21st century list. That's when I realized Andy and I were just
On
natural
trial.
enemies. What's weird is we agree on music in the 80s and early 90s.
Yeah, we do.
Like you
were
were
very
two
excited.
of the only 4 people I know who would have been excited for the REM 1982 full concert video, Birth of College Rock.
I am so excited for this. I would give anything to live in that video, as described by you.
Could there be another? First of all, the Birth of College Rock has to be 82, right? 81 feels too early.
Yeah.
It's. I think that people associate it with Athens right around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So 82 feels right.
Yeah.
There's can't be an earlier full concert of REM.
Also, what an amazing era because that's right when Murmur is about to come out.
And we all
But
agree
they're
they're the
touring.
founding forefathers, right?
Of the college radio,
College
I think,
alternative,
yeah. I mean,
80s
there was like a
spilling into 90s rock.
post-punk scene and a
yeah,
hardcore scene and stuff
We
like
keep
that.
flirting with doing an REM pod. You have to come back if we do because we feel
I would love to be involved, and I think they are not only the most underrated band
Yes.
of that decade, but it's never really made sense why they died and just went away.
yeah. I
As
think
in like a cultural significance way.
I think the inverse of that is it's really weird that they were popular. that they were the biggest band in the world for a minute.
The biggest band.
The biggest band.
Yeah.
For a 3-year period, maybe?
Yeah.
Like, remember?
What was weird is they peaked at the wrong time of the band's arc.
Is
like
it
they really peaked from 92 to 94,
In
but
the
that
terms of
wasn't
being
their
famous.
best work. Yeah.
Is it kind of green through
I say-
Monster?
Out of time and Monster, Out of Time Automatic for the People. and
I
Monster.
just the other day I was just remembering about because I was thinking my wife and I were talking about like actually when Kurt Cobain killed himself and watching MTV that whole day. Well, but we were talking about because wasn't Monster right after that?
Yeah.
And it was somewhat about him.
Let Me In. The song Let Me In is about Kurt Cobain.
Yeah, and there's songs about Courtney too, right?
Yeah, well, because the other thing in that era was that Michael Stipe, as you're saying, was older than everyone else. And so he was like the godfather of the scene. He was 34 at the time. But I remember thinking he couldn't possibly be older than, no one could be older than him. But he was like the wise figure that everyone was saying to Kurt to reach out to like, he can help you through this time. And then he was palling around with Courtney.
I think Losing My Religion was one of the biggest songs of that, like 87 and 93. It just felt gigantic. It almost felt like it was too big for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like the
first
Hootie and the
video where he
Blowfish
lip-synced.
big. Yeah.
Like Brenda and Dylan broke up on 90210 and Brenda was just playing Losing My Religion for an entire episode. It's like, how did REM get into 90210?
In the 92 MTV inaugural ball, do you remember they did an inaugural ball for Clinton?
Yeah.
And at that inaugural ball, there was a super group called Automatic Baby that was half of U2 and half of REM. You remember that? And they did, and Natalie Merchant came out and sang To Sir With Love, duetted with Michael Stipe, and they sang one.
Disaster.
That's
But think about telling someone, even today, like U2 is not at their peak, but they're selling out arenas doing Joshua Tree, and they still have this mantle of like, well, they are the big rock band, even though they're all, they're on the downslope of their career. But that they were equals with REM for a moment,
Yeah.
it's just impossible to
That was
the
actually,
old-
by the way, that was only the second best supergroup of the early 90s. The other one
Hindu
was
Love Gods?
the Backbeat Band.
Oh,
Do you
yeah.
remember that movie Backbeat about the early Beatles?
When the Beatles were in Germany.
And there was a supergroup of Dave Grohl, Mike Mills,
Greg Dooley,
Dave Perner, and
Yeah.
Don, the guy from Gumball. What was that guy's name?
I want to
And
give
Don
you the
Was
answer.
produced it, and it was like they just played early Beatles song. It's so good. It is awesome.
Well, this is like the old Chuck Klosterman game, but there's 3 guys from that era that if they just died at the perfect time, they would be remembered totally differently now. And I think Michael Stipe might be number 1. If he just been in a car accident in 1993.
To be fair, Michael Stipe spent 1986 through 1996 with everyone suspecting that he was dying.
Right.
Remember that? And that was like a big rumor, was that he had AIDS or he was sick.
Well,
or
yeah,
something.
he had two major drawbacks. One is that he wasn't a good stage performer.
He was
He was enigmatic. I think people were like,
He started dancing later.
Yeah, it was a rough concert. he
one
wasn't
you're
really
talking about?
engaged in the
81
audience.
the early one?
I'm just saying, just in general. I mean, we saw them in the late '80s, and it was like he was always he never wanted to be a rock star.
Let's talk about the thing hanging over this whole conversation, something that hasn't existed since the 90s. He struggled with fame. Nobody struggles with
Nobody
fame.
does.
I know,
yeah,
seriously.
it's such a weird thing.
they're struggling with fame on Instagram now.
My
exactly.
3 guys though are Michael Stipe, Billy Corgan. If he just right after Siamese Dream, like something happens, he's talked about in this, and I actually think Dave Matthews.
Wow.
If Dave Matthews had died right after the second
Do you think
album,
people like love Dave Matthews the way they love Billy Corgan though? Like
I
they're
think
so-
Dave Matthews had a real moment there in like '95,
Well,
where he was kind of like the voice of that little.
He had the 2-track fandom, though. He always had the kind of
The
like
jam band
college
kids,
campus
yeah.
jam fan base, and then he was a pop star for like a couple years in there.
but an accidental pop star.
Yeah.
though. It was always like this guy who was kind of.
It's a good point to
even the name of his band.
mention that
Wasn't
I'm
even
going to
trying.
be leaving the Ringer to write my book, Accidental Stardom with Dave Matthews.
Accidental. That's actually sounds like another REM song.
That is the whole middle of their
The
career.
weirdest REM song was he just became fascinated by Andy Kaufman and wrote that Man on the Moon song.
Oh, yeah.
and was really committed to it.
Yeah, and then
it
the
was
Great,
like the most important song of his career.
And then there was
The
the
Great Beyond was the single they wrote for the Andy Kaufman movie,
right.
which is also
what
a
was
really
the Andy
good song.
Kaufman? Who was in that?
Jim Carrey. I literally just watched it 3 weeks ago.
How
and
does it
it's
hold up?
amazing. They made the really strange decision of pretty much everyone in Andy's life from 78 to 82, they just cast in 1998.
As
It's
themselves.
like Letterman's in it as Letterman in 1998, but playing 1982 Letterman and Lorne Michaels and all the cast of Taxi, like Judd Hirsch.
Judd Hirsch is in the movie as Judd Hirsch.
Mary Lou Henner. It's like, why did they do this
That's
this
an
way?
interesting
It's
choice.
really disorienting. But Jim Carrey is excellent.
I always get that movie and The People versus Larry Flint. I associate very heavily with each other for some reason.
Were they made
That's
by
a
the
grim
same people?
rewatch.
Maybe. I mean, I just know
The
that.
same director, right?
They were
Yeah.
written by
Milos Forman.
the guys who did People vs. OJ, right? By
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
the guy whose name I can't pronounce.
All right.
Wait, while we have you, last pop
Yeah.
culture thing. How do you feel about the return of Curb Your Enthusiasm? Do you see there's a trailer? He's coming back in October.
I just don't think he would ever do this unless he felt like it was going to work.
Because you've
I
talked to
think
him a few times. So has he
He
said
never
as
wanted
much
to
to
do
you?
it.
He was out.
The only case you could make against maybe this won't work is that he did get divorced.
Mhm.
And who knows? Once
Right.
post-divorce, he started grasping for... But I really don't think that's the case here. I really feel like he was waiting for whatever the right idea was through the whole season. Because every season now has to have an idea, right?
Right.
Yep.
But it's been so long since... I don't even remember how many years. Did we even have Grantland the last time it was on?
No,
No.
I never wrote
It was
about
like
it. So it's
2010,
7
right?
years, yeah.
Yeah. Somebody said today, it was like, it went off the air 7 months before Veep started. So
Wow.
it's been that long.
I think it's been longer.
Longer?
I think so, but
Because what's crazy is if you watch like season 1, that feels like
that was years
it
ago.
was like in 2000.
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking like The Sopranos was just coming on that year when that.
There's a
first
lot
Curb
of
was-
stuff that's starting to happen to me more and more as stuff from the early 2000s feels like it's from another century. I mean,
It's funny that The Sopranos hasn't aged well.
do you think it hasn't?
I don't think so.
That's like this is a
I
huge
don't know if-
conversation. We
I
gotta
don't
have you
know
back
if-
to have a what is aged well conversation.
Well, I don't know if the under 25 generation is like, I'm going to bang out The Sopranos. I feel like The Wire has more of a tale.
Yeah, and
Don't
it's
you
been
Yeah.
they put the trailer out today for The Deuce, which is the new David Simon show on HBO with James Franco playing twins, which already means.
Right.
You're right. It was 2011 was season 8.
Okay.
So it ended
It was
right as we were
right
coming
before
on.
Grantland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's interesting because they have a lot of the Wire crowd, like Sabatka's in it.
Yeah.
Method Man is in it. Yeah. And it's funny to see, like, I guess part of it is that I wonder how much of the Sopranos thing is affected by David Chase's relative creative silence, like other than the coming of age rock and roll movie he made. What was that called?
Never. Not
Fade Away. Right. Yeah.
Which should have been a TV show.
Right. But he hasn't really made a lot of stuff since then.
I also wonder if it's just people tell you what The Wire. It's talked about in these hallowed terms, but it's also it's essentially it's very tight. It's one story, as you're saying. Sopranos, the DNA was old TV in that it was these characters and it was sort of digressive, and there are whole seasons where you remember the Johnny Cakes up in New England. I mean, there are whole diversions that if you were making
The
a quote,
time
unquote,
parade.
perfect show, you would probably excise. But I
So-
think I make the case that that's why the show is good and
Right.
worth exploring because it really
It's such a bridge show. Yeah.
it's so
Are you volunteering to do binge mode, The Sopranos, 120 episodes?
Yeah, only if I can do it with the same exacting perfectionism as Mallory and Jason, and Zach's willing to work 9-day weeks.
Here's what I think. I think The Sopranos, The Shield, and Oz belong to a different generation, almost like an NBA, where it's like Dr. J and the Iceman and those guys, but then like Bird and Magic come along. Like,
Yeah, it's like the
they
post-Jordan,
did the blueprint
pre-LeBron
for
era.
it, but yeah, the other shows are just better done.
I
think.
agree with you about The Shield and Oz.
The Shield
but I
is
think
not aged well at all.
Sopranos bridges it.
Because I mean, really, TV should be like a filet mignon, right? Like The Wire's like a filet mignon. There's not a lot of fat on it. There's not a lot of wasted episodes.
I think
The
so.
Sopranos
Character
is
arcs.
hugely influential in many ways, obviously, but in one key way that I think we're feeling a lot today, which is David Chase didn't care what the audience thought of it.
Right.
But especially by the end, he was like, you people want blood. Here you are, you monsters. Like these people I'm making a show about terrible people. And I'm not going to give you what you want. And I think that we're seeing more and more of that as we're even more auteur-driven now than we were then.
But how many
So
Sopranos episodes were there, you think? Maybe 75?
There were 7 seasons, right? Or 6 and a
12
half,
12
I think
each?
they called.
I would
and
say
one was long. One was like 18, I think, one
if
season.
we had a stat like in sports where you could measure the amount of fat versus what the actual number of
Okay.
episodes should have been, I would say The Sopranos.
86, guys. That's much more than I thought.
Oh,
Yeah, I would say The Sopranos should have been like 50 to 55
There's 60
episodes.
episodes of The Wire. There
Yeah.
are 86 episodes.
And The
of
Wire was
Sopranos.
probably 5 episodes too fat.
Yeah.
how many
think
episodes
Mad
of like
Men was
Breaking Bad
probably-
were there? Were there like 50 episodes?
54, I think.
54?
I'm gonna check.
Breaking Bad's probably the tightest of all of
Yeah,
them.
and Breaking Bad, the last season, quote unquote, or 2 seasons, quote
62.
unquote, are just like
62.
6 episodes,
And
right?
Game of Thrones, after this season, will be at 67, and then there's going to be
7
movie
more?
length 4 more, 5
Yeah.
more.
I always thought it would have been a cool idea if somebody somebody like David Chase would never do this, but if they're like, here, take the 86 hours of The Sopranos,
Oh, and do a cut?
just do a movie for each season.
Yeah.
Season 1 movie.
But here,
cut out all the fat and just reinvent it.
I wonder if anybody's ever going to do that. We were just talking about this because
Andy hates this idea.
I was telling Sean Yu about the chronological Godfather cut, how you can watch it where it starts in New York.
That's like disorienting.
Yeah, and it's really strange.
I don't actually. I think it does.
It's
a
really
bad
strange
service
for
to the
Michael
movie.
to come in that late.
Yeah,
Yeah, but. It was. I was wondering if, I wonder if you could go back and start doing these re-edits of stuff. I mean,
I want to make one more argument for The Sopranos, and I want to do it using
we're
something.
not Sopranos bashing.
No, but
Sopranos.
for people taking time to go back to it, because I think you're onto something. That I think you're probably. We have no evidence of this whatsoever, but I think probably you're right that people are more likely to watch Breaking Bad, which is exceptional, one of the greatest shows of all time. Also because it follows one straight line down. It's one story beginning to end, and it goes straight down, right? But you guys, in your recent NBA podcast, which I loved, talked a lot about, and Chris then wrote a piece about this, about it shouldn't just be tanking or titles. That there is something about enjoying the ride and enjoying a first-round loss of dignity or fun or whatever. And the fun of The Sopranos, I remember watching it, catching up the first 3 seasons, then watching the last 3 live, I think, and having so much fun watching them on DVD because there was just so many weird stories and following it on this meandering thing. We didn't know where it was going.
I don't remember.
It wasn't only about Tony. It was about this whole world that expanded outwards. And that is part of the pleasure of TV, is getting lost in something, not knowing the end game as you set off on the journey.
That's what I was going to ask. Is I don't think I was really reading as much about television when Sopranos went off the air. Is Tony going to live or not a big question before the last episode?
Nope.
Also, I think we were TV viewers of a different era. So, of course, the star of the show isn't going to die. You know, this is like pre-Ned Stark.
Right.
We didn't expect that kind of formalist experimentation. This
but
was a show
was it
about
hanging
a guy.
over the last season?
You mean in the last season?
Yeah. Was it hanging over
season.
Is Tony going to live hanging over the last season?
I think if it was 2017, I think that would have been
the only thing people talked about.
Yeah. I think
because we're much dumber now.
But at the end, it definitely was. People were making the case that the only way this show can end, and that obviously informed how people watched the finale, which was, with this vehemence that he died. Like
I think the internet would have been much less kind. The 2017 internet, during the Sopranos arc, would have been much more vicious. Because I remember 2003, I was at Kimmel's show. There was a Sopranos season when I was at Kimmel's show. And we would come in on Monday for the writers' meeting where we're supposed to try to figure out our show. And we would talk about the Sopranos for like over an hour. And there wasn't really a place to get that. The internet hadn't really formed with their message boards.
But it was a show that demanded that. Yeah.
Yeah, and a lot of it was us complaining, but we loved it. But part of the magic of the Sopranos it would have these 4 kind of dissatisfying episodes. And then it would have the one amazing episode, and you'd be like, "Oh my God!" Like that's kind of what you would wait for over and over again. It was like a basketball player that got hot every once in a while.
People thought of it. I think of this when I think of The Sopranos. I think of the first time as a culture people were thinking about a season of TV like a sports season. In the sense that here we go again. It's back. The game's back. This is what we're gonna talk about for 10 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever it was.
That's really cool. I didn't think about it like that, but yeah.
But there wasn't much. Also, there wasn't much. I mean, there were other shows.
We're also
on the
talking
air.
about Gandolfini, who didn't have a lot of history with people except for True Romance and 8mm and these smaller movies that. And then
really kind, heartfelt roles.
Really
lovable, warm. Yeah.
And then it was like, shit, this guy's the star of a TV show. That's crazy. And then he becomes.
Was there like was it always him, or was
The Sopranos was developed by David Chase for Fox.
Yeah.
With Anthony LaPaglia.
Oh God,
in the lead role.
Right.
You need so much luck with this stuff.
Yeah. And
how many Don Drapers were there supposed to be before him?
It was a millimeter away from being Thomas Jane, who later went on to star in Hung and was really good in Boogie Nights.
I still feel like he's Boogie Nights Todd. Todd Parker.
That he could have been Don Draper too. But yeah, the timing of all this stuff is so precise.
So wild.
And
what
crazy.
do you think you need more luck with the creator or the star? I would say the creator.
I still think that the star has a lot to do with it, because I was just going to say
the star can sink it.
You were talking about this idea of like shows that you can enjoy the journey on, and I think one of the most recent, on the large scale, recent examples of that is like Friday Night Lights, where it was like, were they to win state championship or not was really not the point of watching the show. And I was thinking a lot about how much all the kids in that movie, I mean, they've gone into varying degrees of success. But the show. Yeah. But one of the reasons why that show is so beloved is literally because of the cast. I mean,
that's what people remember.
If Kyle Chandler's not Coach Taylor, if
if
it's Billy Bob, even if it's Billy Bob who played him in the movie.
But here's it's one of the fundamental differences between movies and TV, right? Where if you're a good creator and you have a good script and you have a good point of view, you can make a good pilot. You can maybe make a good season. But TV shows have to continue to expand and grow and deepen, and you have to continue to want to spend time with them and fall in love with them, and you have to do new things.
Yeah.
You can't just do the first season over again, and that's when you need a cast who can get better, who has depth that people want to spend time with.
I would argue that
and you
The
sink into
Sopranos
it.
didn't have that cast.
You don't even love Paulie Walnuts?
I think when you
I feel
watch
like
those shows
people have
again,
become iconic characters, though, right?
they were iconic characters,
They're
but
incredible.
it would have been interesting to see like better actors in those roles,
For some, I mean,
like Stevie Van Zandt.
but there were some people who, I mean, the star of Lilyhammer, Netflix's first original
Well,
show.
I mean, it's almost like the 98 Bulls. Like, what did everybody do after the show?
But
Nobody went on to do anything.
there are a couple people who, like,
Except
I think
for Gandolfini.
surprised them, and so they got more to do, like Bobby Bacala, like that guy.
How bad was
there
AJ
early.
Soprano?
He was probably. Well, kids are always problematic. I'll tell you, I know one thing that the Sopranos extended cast has done since the show.
What?
They are reliable guests at every HBO launch premiere party in New York City at the
Very
buffet table.
available.
They are always there, and they're thrilled to see each other, and they're helping themselves to the gabagool. It's great.
I have a last question, then I'll go because I hijacked your pod inadvertently. Although
It's
we're having
always a
fun.
pleasure. Yeah.
Why do you think The Bronx Tale hasn't aged as well as some of the other Italian/mafia movies?
Chaz Palminteri,
Have you watched The Bronx Tale? It is
I haven't watched
lights
it in a
out.
while.
De
The
Niro.
characters are great.
Is that
It's got
DiCaprio?
40
It's DiCaprio,
No,
right?
it's Leo
No.
Brancato, right?
Yeah, it's the little kid who witnesses the
That's not
Chaz
DiCaprio.
Palm.
What
no,
am I
that's
thinking of?
This
You're
Boy's
thinking
Life.
of the
Life.
yeah,
Yeah,
which is
see,
like
the-
him in the Boy Scouts outfit.
Yes.
The
Okay,
only
so no.
other person who's with me on this is Lombardi. I feel like The Bronx Tale is at least it's in the Goodfellas conversation. It's not as good as
No.
Goodfellas.
That's
It's
a short
like
conversation.
But when I'm just talking about favorite movies of like just Italian people, mafia, like
Uh-huh.
it should be mentioned.
Okay. I'll have
It's
to go
just
back and
pushed
watch
off
it.
the side.
Yeah, I gotta go back and watch it. Is that was Chaz Palminteri's
It's got
like
Eddie
one
Mush.
man?
that was his play.
yeah, it was
right?
like his
And
one
then
man
he-
show.
Remember when Chaz?
See, this is why I brought this up. I
Chaz
feel
was
like
the
it's just
male
pushed
Gretchen
under the
Mol
rug.
of the '90s.
Chaz
was just suddenly dropped in our laps.
so much
Chaz was
screen
great
time
in that
Usual
movie and not good in
Suspects.
any other movie.
He's okay in Usual Suspects. He does his job.
Usual Suspects and Memento
Memento.
are the two movies that have not carried the audience that they had in the moment.
I think
Yeah.
I would
They're
be.
not mentioned.
I would
ever.
like. To,
People
Memento
make,
had a real
people
moment.
make Usual Suspects jokes, but I don't know how many people watch the movie.
Yeah, I don't think people even know who was in. They don't even know. Like,
I've
one of the
rewatched Usual
Baldwins is in it.
Suspects recently. Let me tell you something.
It holds up.
That movie is really good.
It's good.
Man, that movie is awesome.
There was a nice little run of the mid '90s of movies that weren't spoiled by the internet
Crying
that now
Game.
just could not happen.
Yeah, right.
Usual
Crying Game.
Suspects.
I didn't know what
Crying
was going to
Game.
happen in the Crying Game. I didn't
Me
know like
either.
if somebody's head was going to come off or what.
It was not that.
Yeah.
No,
it was
it
the
wasn't
opposite
that.
of that.
Now there'd be a whole backlash to it.
I know.
Why
All right.
is this the big reveal?
Let's wrap it up because we got to talk about
Yeah, go.
Spider-Man before we get out of here. Bill Simmons, thank you for
Can
joining
you guys
us.
watch Bronx Tale?
We'll watch. We'll have a special Bronx Tale binge mode.
I forgive you for Baby Driver.
I'm glad we could work it out. I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
I understand. We understand where both of us are coming from.
18 months from now is January 2019.
Yeah.
I'm gonna get you good.
Yeah.
I'm gonna really upset you.
That'll be the John Hamm Showtime show that
Yeah.
one of us likes and one of us
When
doesn't
John
like.
Hamm replaces Schreiber on Ray Donovan.
Or it'll just be Sixers Celtics stuff.
It's gonna be Rick Donovan.
Yeah.
It's Ray Donovan's
it's my brother Rick.
Rick Donovan.
He's also good at fixing things.
See you
Bye,
later,
guys.
Bill. We'll take a quick break from our sponsor and then to hear from our sponsor, and then we will be right back to talk about Spider-Man: Homecoming. Today's episode of The Watch is brought to you by Simply Safe. Getting a good night's sleep is easier said than done, especially when you think you just heard a noise downstairs. Think about it. What do you want to do in that situation? You could turn on all the lights and keep watch. You check your kids' beds every hour, sleep with one eye open, or you can rest easy knowing that your home and family are protected with Simply Safe. When you install your Simply Safe home security system, you are arming your home with a powerful set of sensors that actually tell you if a door is open or if a window breaks. There's a 105 decibel siren that alerts you at the first sign of trouble. That sounds incredibly loud and terrifying to burglars and cats. And a dedicated team of security professionals watching over you 24/7. They're ready to send the police. With Simply Safe, there are no long-term contracts, and around-the-clock monitoring is only $14.99 a month. So don't spend another night second-guessing your home safety. Get Simply Safe and get some rest. Go to simplysafe.com/ringer and get a special 10% discount when you order today. That's simplysafe.com/ringer for 10% off your order. simplysafe.com/ringer. Today's episode of The Watch is also brought to you by the homies at SeatGeek. Buying tickets to sports and concerts can be a complicated and confusing process, but there is a better, simpler way to buy with SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to live events. With SeatGeek's seamless mobile experience, you can buy and sell tickets in just 2 taps, and SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best prices, fully guaranteed. There is nothing quite like seeing your favorite team or musician in person, and SeatGeek will get you closer to the action for a great value. I have the SeatGeek app on my phone. It is my plug for the Dodgers. Whenever I want to go to Dodger Stadium, which is one of my favorite places in Los Angeles.
You park at my house and we walk together.
I do that sometime, or sometimes I take a ride-sharing app and I go get dropped off there so that then I can walk down the hill and enjoy a beverage. SeatGeek saves you time and money by searching multiple ticket sites to compare prices and find amazing deals. And to get you the most bang for your buck, SeatGeek grades every ticket based on value to help you immediately identify the best seats that fit your budget. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket, from sports and concerts to comedy and theater. Best of all, Watch listeners get a $20 rebate off their first SeatGeek purchase. That's awesome. To get your $20 rebate on tickets, download the SeatGeek app, go to the settings tab, and click add a promo code. Enter promo code WATCH, and SeatGeek will send you $20 after you made your first ticket purchase. Download the SeatGeek app and enter promo code WATCH today. All right, we are back, Andy. Nice little cameo from Bill Simmons.
That was surprising.
That was great.
Do you think I diffused the situation?
I thought so. Just you guys just vibing out on The Sopranos just made it all gravy. We are here to talk now about Spider-Man Homecoming, but I want to talk a little bit just before we get into that.
Because we haven't made people wait long enough.
About some more pressing news affecting the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Oh.
And that is the double arm break of Jeremy Renner.
First of all, how dare you laugh?
So Jeremy Renner broke his arms,
plural,
arms, while filming a comedy. He wasn't even filming Infinity War 9 or whatever the hell.
He was filming The House 2?
He was filming Tag.
What's that?
I bet it's about playing tag.
It's like the bastard stepchild of Fist Fight. Like this is where we are now.
I get
with
it's like or like yeah, basically it is. I think it's probably about a game of tag that goes. I get the feeling like comedies are being like. It's not even an elevator pitch. It's just like, before I go into the elevator, tell me what this is.
No, it's like, do you actually know what these words signify in this order? Fine, please buy a ticket.
He's definitely not casted up. I'm looking at Instagram now. He seems to be wearing 2 arm braces, and like he's just, and his Instagram says fall down 7 times, stand up 8. Fixed up hashtag, which is also, you could apply to any of his real estate investments, which he fixes up.
Exactly right. He's still
but
branding.
I don't know how he's going to work on the wainscoting if he's got 2 broken arms.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, I guess the thing you could say is everything he does big. Why break 1 arm when you could break 2?
That's true.
I feel bad for him.
I feel bad for him too. I'm not trying to make fun of him.
I'm just shocked.
I just worry about the real estate bubble if he's not working on houses.
I thought this was done during Infinity War. Like, please tell me that he rapped.
It was done during a comedy. I think he's just doing his like, I have to stand in front of a green screen and go, Cap!
I have to say, we're in rehearsals for our Talk the Throne show.
Yes.
And we did a rehearsal last night, and by the way, let me just apologize to you again for my behavior during that rehearsal.
Yeah, it was pretty out of line.
It was unprefessional. But we watched an episode ahead of time, and we watched an episode from season 6.
Yeah.
And it's an episode where the Hound
we watched No One. Yeah.
Gets some revenge. And when he
Pees
encounters
in a river.
He sure does.
Yeah.
Mallory's still talking about it. When he encounters Thoros and Barrick,
yeah,
a bunch of Thoros and Barrick's dudes. That sounds like I'm shipping them.
I love Thoric.
Yeah. They point some bows and arrows at him, and the Hound has a negative opinion of archers and their role in the fighting firmament. And I was thinking about Hawkeye in that.
Yeah,
when he was like,
he's like, don't point your arrow at me like a little girl.
You Nancy's.
Yeah, I have to come clean and say that much like. I just feel like I'm playing myself into shape, much like Markelle Fultz. Last night
we were talking about
how
you jinxed Markelle Fultz. You flew to Vegas to see Markelle Fultz. You saw him crumple to the floor.
Yes, that was not cool.
We're not cool.
I didn't enjoy it. Yeah. But last night I felt like when I was like, how come Thoros and Barrick don't sign up for somebody's team? They seem like they're the cool free agents. And Mallory was like, because they're the brotherhood
No,
without banners.
You literally said, why don't they fight under anyone's banner? Then you were like, why don't they let any sisters in their club?
Andy, what's in a name? You know what I mean? If we can't work on our branding, what can we do?
It's right there, you know?
Okay. You know what I mean? Everybody has to choose a side. We'll find out soon. Game of Thrones, Talk the Thrones is on Sunday night, right after the episode. We have a special guest. I don't know if we're allowed to say who it is yet.
Maybe we'll announce it at our live show tomorrow night at Largo and then talk about it on Thursday.
When we're going to be joined by Mallory Rubin and Jason Concepcion from the popular podcast.
We have a star of an HBO show coming to join us.
It's not Game of Thrones, though.
No, of course not.
It's actually the guy who gets shot. It's the guy who gets his head ripped off.
It's actually not one of the stars of After the Thrones either, because we couldn't get those guys.
Yeah, those guys, they're out of our price range. Okay, let's talk about Spider-Man, which seems to be, with my, polling is up and down these days across the globe.
Indeed.
But I don't think I've met somebody who doesn't like this movie, or no, I don't know of anybody. There's one person on the Ringer staff who will remain nameless for now, because I don't want to spoil any piece that they might have coming, who did not like it. Thought it was bourgeois.
Wow.
Yeah. But
finally, the internet has a new enemy. Aim your Nancy bow and arrows at that person.
But this movie was just delightful. And part of the reason why I liked it so much was how small it felt.
Yes.
It is a local movie. It is largely set in the outer boroughs of New York City. It's about I don't care at all about the verisimilitude of Queens, modern day Queens. I don't care where they shot it. I know the color palette is boring. I know that
a little better than most.
Yeah, sure. It's great. I mean, like I didn't care at all, because this movie did something that I've been waiting for it to happen. And I think it's starting to slowly happen with Ant-Man, with this, like where you're starting to see basically that largely improvised style that you see in Apatow movies or say like Neighbors or something like that, where you can tell this was like the 9th version of the joke that they're trying out. This had some of that energy and some of that irreverence, but it felt very, very tightly scripted.
Yeah.
And each scene seemed to have a purpose, and it seemed to build something more and more. And no matter what plot holes or anything you could find that was wrong with the movie, it just kind of gets washed away by how delightful every single person is in this movie. And we just talked to Bill. He was like, do you think it's more important to have a cast or a creator? And John Watts did a great job of this, and the screenplay was great. But everybody in this movie deserves 10 times more money than they got, because they were awesome. Yeah. Tom Holland was great. Zendaya was great.
She really was.
Michael Keaton was great.
Tomei back.
Tomei got the high waist pants.
Yeah.
I can't even know where to start.
I thought this movie was goddamn delightful. I had a wonderful time seeing it. I am surprised by that, because the Lord knows the world did not need another Spider-Man movie, but apparently it just needed a pretty good movie about a character in a world that people naturally love. And here's the thing I want to say more than anything else. This isn't rocket science. We've now been making superhero movies as a culture for 20 years, and people still don't get it. Now, the whole dynamic of the conversation has changed. 20 years ago, when I was just a young strapping comic book fan, the idea of any movies getting made seemed impossible. Like nothing was ever going to be made of these, but certainly of minor characters like Ant-Man or Deadpool or whatever. But the idea of even a Spider-Man movie felt very far-fetched. We've been doing it long enough and making enough money. Certain companies have been making enough money that the assumption is that they know how to do these things. But I would push back, and I still think they're getting it mostly wrong. Spider-Man and Batman are the two most popular superheroes, full stop. I feel like that is a safe comment to make.
Yeah.
And the reason why is because they're dudes. Now, I wish they were not dudes. I wish there were some who were ladies as well in this conversation. But what I mean by that is not their gender identity, but rather that they don't have superpowers really. They're kind of, Spider-Man does have superpowers, but they are essentially normal people put into abnormal situations. Batman does it in a very gruff, serious way, which can lead to a very specific type of story that can be done very well. I'm a Spider-Man guy. I think Spider-Man is probably the greatest superhero ever created, even though...
Can you change your Twitter bio to I'm a Spider-Man guy?
Yes. Yes. There's so much win on my Twitter feed right now anyway that I think that I should. And the reason why is because he's a kid who doesn't know what he's doing, who lives in Queens.
Yeah.
And for as entertaining as those Sam Raimi movies were, the first two certainly, plus the jazz sequence from the third one, those got it a little bit. They got the wonder. but they always ran as far away from this central thing as possible. I think is it the first Spider-Man that begins, or there's I just remember a graduation scene pretty early in either the first one or the second one. Like, let's get him living in Manhattan. Let's get him away from the stuff that actually matters as quickly as possible. This movie understood that.
Yeah, and it also did something really smart by being an origin movie without being an origin story.
Oh, such a smart thing. We're so tired of it. You know what words never got said in this movie? Uncle Ben.
Yeah, he's looming, but the how did you become Spider-Man gets handled in one line of throwaway dialogue with Ned, where
because
he's just
we
like,
all know.
Yeah, I got bit. And he's like, what? And it's kind of funny because Ned asks all these ridiculous Reddit AMA questions about it. Like, can you do lay eggs?
Yep.
Like, do you spit venom? And he's like, no. And it's like, great. And any other adaptation of this would be 45 minutes of him shuffling around school hallways and being like, I feel different. I wish I could understand myself.
Can you put that voice on your Twitter bio?
That was my Tobey Maguire.
Oh,
yeah.
Do that voice of Tobey Maguire at high stakes poker at 3 a.m, like a Michael Clayton setup in Chinatown.
Let's see the river. No.
Okay. You keep talking.
You want me to keep talking?
I don't remember what
because
I
I
was
still got
saying.
takes. Here's my other take.
I got takes, but I'll come
what
back
do
to
you
them.
think about the fact that this is engineered to be timeless? So it feels, and people have I've heard people mention Can't Hardly Wait. I've heard people mention 16 Candles.
There's an overt Ferris
Bueller reference. There is very little, like when they go to the prom, there is no Machine Gun Kelly cameo. I don't know, Machine Gun Kelly, like it would probably be like 21
No, they're
Savage.
playing Flock of Seagulls.
Right. It's got an 80s vibe. It's got a kind of utopian, like even though high school is hard, Flash is hardly a bully. You know, he's more just sort of like...
Look, people forget this too. There's certain things in entertainment that are not hard. They're maybe hard to do, but they're not hard to remember or conceive of. People love teenage stories. Just they're always going to be, you know, it's why every few years there's a show like The OC or 90210 or Riverdale or whatever, where teenage emotions are heightened and everyone experienced them. Either they're experiencing them now or they remember them in a very nostalgic way, usually associated with music or other culture. That's still pleasurable and fun to do. And this movie, people who made the movie not only understood that, they celebrated it in a way that other movies are afraid to do. And they got it right in subtle ways. You mentioned the Flash thing. First of all, shouts to Tony Revolori, late of the Grand Budapest Hotel, who's terrific in this.
He was like a villain out of a John Cusack movie,
but the
movie, a popped collar.
But the movie remembered something, which is that one of the weird things about high school is that it's rarely overt heroes and villains. Someone might be a villain, but you kind of have to still be in math club with them, or whatever the case may be. So the relationship with Flash was they're not friends, but they know each other.
Yeah.
They're in each other's lives. They have to see each other every day. They can't be a fight on Monday and then like they're taking the Spanish pop quiz on Wednesday. There was a really nice relationship between them. And also, I realize it feels like we're giving praise for small things that more movies should get right, but they don't. Which is to say, this movie is about a teenager in Queens, supposedly in 2017. So thank you for giving us a Queens and certainly a high school in Queens that looks like Queens, which is the most diverse square footage area of America and feels like it in a wonderful way. And that's what that school felt like too. They cast it really well.
I want to talk about Tom Holland, but first I just want to ask you how much, first of all, do you think that there are any scenes in this movie where it's just a Robert Downey Jr. hologram? Like he's not actually
literally
there?
all of them.
Yeah.
One of the most interesting things was
because there was almost a joke about that going through the movie, like with the Iron Man, the robot Iron Man, he's not in the suit. And just like this thing where he's like in more and more ridiculous places when he's FaceTiming.
I thought
with
that
him.
Was cool that they brought
really
a GoPro rig to the wedding that Robert Downey Jr. was really attending in Mumbai.
Yeah, but now that they're using Robert Downey Jr. out of the bullpen like Andrew Miller now, where it's like he might just take over your game. But I also haven't watched baseball in 9 months, so I'm not sure if that's accurate.
His arm has recently flown off of his body.
Did it really?
No.
Oh, okay.
The thing that you said at the beginning, I want to come back to about it being a small movie, because the one criticism I started to have, which the movie smartly
whittling
undid, was I'm not a fan of Spider-Man with an Iron Man suit, with all the gadgets and doodads and like the digital assistant and everything. And one of the great things the movie accomplished, this was just very well constructed, is that that's part of this story, which is he always has someone to bail him out until suddenly he doesn't.
Yeah.
And the movie does a very good job. You rarely feel anything close to emotional stakes in these movies. This one was different. The moment when Keaton opens the door and is Liz's dad, Many people probably could have seen it coming. I didn't. I was delighted by that.
Yeah.
What a great twist. Way to make it personal for both.
Great scene in the car, him driving him to the prom and asking him questions.
And it's working as what it appears to be, and with a subtext of the superhero versus villain. The protagonist and antagonist both have family relationships that are at stake, which makes it interesting going forward. No one dies, which is also really nice. But also that it gave this weight to the end where he doesn't have anyone to help him. There isn't Iron Man coming to fly in. There isn't a special magic suit with just the right combination of web shooters to save the day. That made it feel real, even though he was wrestling an invisible flying plane, even though every decision he made in the film as a hero was more or less catastrophic, and everything was his fault.
Yeah, and I think that part of that is Holland. So I remember when Andrew Garfield was Spider-Man.
Garf.
And I'm not trying to pile on because I know he's taken some L's recently in the press, but he did this, like his round of press for like getting the Spider-Man role was like, it is just an enormous honor and a huge responsibility to play Spider-Man. And it was like, chill out. You know, like now it's like this dude is Billy Elliot and he's just having a blast dancing all over the city.
Yeah.
And there's very little like, you know, weight on this movie. It's so light on its feet. And it's not an insult to Andrew Garfield, but I think he got unlucky in the, hey, let's reimagine Spider-Man as like a really goth emo kid.
Yeah.
And Tom Holland gets the benefit of let's reinvent Spider-Man as a Vine. You know what I mean? Like as a really fun like child of this, like everything's okay, right? Like,
but also embracing things like remember the joke in 21 Jump Street where they go back to high school and being smart is suddenly cool and they're totally stymied by that. These kids are smart kids. They're fine. And I kind of like that. I love that they, with Zendaya, who is, I guess, a model or I don't actually.
She's a singer, yeah.
A singer.
Yeah.
They have someone who looks like a model and they cast her as Ali Sheedy.
Right.
And she can play that.
Literally Ali Sheedy because she does she makes the joke about being in detention.
She's really, really funny and winning. And the movie takes its time. It doesn't need to do anything with that. And
she obviously is going to be the star of the second one because she doesn't do much in this one, and she says at the end, "I'm MJ" or whatever.
But the way they weave that in, you're thrilled every time she comes on screen.
Yeah.
When Bill was here, we talked about Baby Driver, and I say this completely honestly, I loved the running time of Baby Driver, not because I wasn't enjoying it, because more movies should be shorter. This movie, as our producer Zach knows, when he suggested we see it, I was like, I don't know, man, it's over. It's like 2:20.
Yeah.
Didn't feel it.
No, the only time it dragged, honestly, was the extended Vulture stuff to rob the Stark plane.
Yeah,
and that's a testament to how really good the more domestic scenes of it are. That the bad part of this movie was the 25-minute action sequence.
Yeah, how about Donald Glover in this? That one scene.
Glover's. I'm not trying to send someone back in time.
He's really good in this. Just this small casting around the margins, like of Martin Starr, of Hannibal Buress, of Michael Chernus.
How much do you think Paltrow made for that walk on?
Did you stick around for the credits of this movie?
I didn't. I know that there was a cutscene. I didn't.
The credits are pop art animated, really fun, set to the Ramones. Also reveal that Paltrow got third billing or something.
What?
That's
amazing.
Somehow she can still throw that goop around.
Shout out to the power of agents.
And that scene was also very good and very fun at the end.
There's even odds that she did not know what movie she was in. She was like, which one is this? Infinity War?
It doesn't matter.
Civil Infinity?
But I'm giving him credit for this because all the stitching, all the setting up, I mean, the movie was aware of it in the way that it showed us Civil War from a kid's perspective.
Yeah.
And it showed us the stuff. This is, again, what Spider-Man should be doing. It shows us on the granular level that Jon Favreau, not friend of the pod Jon Favreau, other Jon Favreau, had to pick him up, take him to the airport. He was in a hotel.
Yeah.
Then went to some airport hangar to have this big battle and then went home in time for math class.
And I love the fact that it was about like what happens when this stupid fight happens in the city and there's all this like trash around the city that is from
Damage
an
Control,
alien world.
When waiting for, I think they are developing a TV show now. That was a great miniseries from Marvel in the 80s.
Damage Control?
It was called Damage Control, and it's about the guys who have to clean up afterwards.
That's really funny. They're developing a TV series about that?
Of course they are. Yeah.
Of course.
Last thing is, if the film adaptation was being made today with Nicolas Cage, I don't think he'd be going to see Robert McKee. I think he'd be going to see Kevin Feige.
You think he's on a hot streak, huh?
I just think, I mean, that guy seems to just really know his business. I mean that purely as a compliment. I thought Doctor Strange was not that great. I think these movies are generally on a downward trajectory. And obviously this one, Amy Pascal and Sony did the bulk of the work. But they were smart enough to bring in Marvel and Feige and everything to make it work, and now it's a big hit. But he does understand something that should be simpler, which is he understands the characters. In the same way that we gave Wonder Woman the praise for this too. Wonder Woman seemed to understand the essential trait of the character that is universal and make people like her. Is
Chris McKenna, who has a screenwriting credit in this movie, the Chris McKenna from Community?
Yes.
So is Community the secret sauce of the late period Marvel movies?
Oh, because Harmon was just throwing alts on the set of Doctor Strange?
Yeah.
The guys who wrote this movie,
John Daly from Freaks and Geeks
and
wrote
Jonathan Goldstein, yeah. So those guys are a writing team,
yeah.
And they did Horrible Bosses, and then they wrote Vacation with Ed Helms, which I low-key kind of liked. And they came on my podcast to talk about that right when they had gotten this gig, and they were not allowed to speak about it, but in anything but generalities, and they seemed to really understand it. Now, they didn't get sole credit. McKenna's on it too, and then they got screen story by.
Yeah.
So clearly there was arbitration. But again, this is either I think you got to give Feige credit here because it felt like one thing. It felt like one piece.
For 5 writers, it did. I think there was 5 credited screenwriters, and it was pretty seamless for that.
And shouts to John Watts, by the way. Cop Car was his last movie, which is
which is also his first movie?
No, he had made a horror film before that.
Okay.
But Cop Car is a very entertaining, very minor. I don't mean that as an insult.
It's also
movie,
very
basically.
tight. It's very tight.
But it's very tight. He directs kids well.
All right, yeah.
Keaton, by the way.
He's having a great time.
Keaton was having a great time.
Insert Birdman joke.
Keaton pulled off the frilled leather jacket, too.
Okay, Tuesday, if you're in LA, we're at Largo.
Yep.
Thursday, watch Re-Up with Jason and Mal previewing season 7 of Game of Thrones.
Which is happening. There's no denying it now.
Sunday night, 10:03, 10:00, as soon as the next week on Game of Thrones is over, go to twitter.com/ringer. You will find us. Hopefully you'll just see us right in your feed.
I think you can find us on the Explorer feed too, right?
I imagine we will be trending worldwide.
And I'm going to, no doubt. And not for the first time, but for the first time for something positive. Also, people keep asking this. You don't have to watch it at that time. It will be available to watch on Twitter.
You can just always go to the Twitter feed. Will be right there. It's never going anywhere. Forever.
It will live forever, like everything else on the internet, including shame.
And then next Monday, I imagine we will try to catch up on Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
Okay, because I didn't get a chance to see it this week, but we have some stuff to catch up, and maybe we'll hit some Snowfall.
Oh, we got to watch Snowfall on FX.
So thanks to Zach Mack. Thanks to Andy Greenwald. Thanks for Bill Simmons. Thanks to you.
Great job, Baranski. Good podcasting.
Today's episode of The Watch was brought to you by Hotel Tonight. Things change, the weather changes, your mood changes, so why lock yourself into plans that might change? With Hotel Tonight, you don't have to, because you'll get incredible deals on awesome hotels, even at the last minute. Booking on Hotel Tonight gives you the freedom and flexibility to play things by ear while knowing you'll score a great price and a great place to stay. So download the Hotel Tonight app and find seriously amazing deals now.